This fall on Comedy Central, the two most powerful millennials the world has ever seen will hit the big time.
Yas, Queen!
Maria Andreevnoff, the lady with the most powerful sight of all time, and Leah Cohen, the girl with the swollest body to ever crush gym equipment, will move in together. After becoming besties on the battlefront, they'll be besties for life as they go from storming battlefields to storming life in the Big Apple.
Check it out. What's it all about?
Okay, I have one. A gynecologist that's also a bikini waxer. That is a literal one-stop pussy shop. I love it.
Two gals cleaning in her underwear for an hour.
What gals?
We? Us gals.
I'm not doing that, dude. What?
You want to come over and hang out? We just got pizza.
What kind?
This is really nice.
Tune in for the premiere of Battleship Broad City, Wednesday at 10:30, right after a new episode of South Park.
You gotta love to be gone back yet. Lobster's a 10, I think don't you grab it.
Welcome to all my new subscribers. So before we dig into this issue, a little overview since I think Uber reviews are quite integral to the history of my channel. Originally, my plan was to review everything including stupid things like gimmick fast food items and other crap outside of movies and TV shows and whatnot. That was to be alongside my regular vlog reviews, which I dragged my buddy Goro to do with me. But I also wanted to do video essays. So the idea of growing the channel was to do regular vlog reviews and use the video essays as a way to push out to a wider audience. And for a while, it worked. It helped me break through the 1,000 subscriber barrier. I also started doing slightly medium tier solo reviews on a few things like Attack on Titan and Game of Thrones for the stuff that only I was following. But this strategy didn't work forever when I noticed that I'd lose subscribers every time I posted video blog review content. So I made the decision to launch a second channel where I could stuff all my low effort content because I was still having fun doing it. I transitioned the main channel into mostly doing video essays, which so far has been a good decision. As time went on, I never really found a format I liked for the mid-tier solo review stuff, so I phased it all out with one exception. That is Uber. And that is because Uber is my favorite comic running right now. Also, it is criminally underappreciated. So these solo reviews are a labor of love to help spread the gospel of the most unloved modern comic by one of the most successful comic writers working today. So if you aren't familiar with the series, I recommend checking out one of my earliest video essays where I spend 20 minutes gushing about it. There's a link in the description below. So before we get into this week's issue, here's a brief overview on what you've been missing. So Uber begins at the tail end of World War II. The Nazis are hiding in their bunkers, ready for the war to end, hoping to avoid their crimes against humanity. But one of Hitler's secret projects has finally bore fruit. An army of superhumans known as Panzermensch, or tankmen, are fully complete and ready to be deployed. They are so powerful they managed to completely rout the Soviet army marching towards Berlin. But thankfully an OSI spy escapes with the core technology, allowing the Allies to produce tankmen of their own. What begins as an arms race, as the Allies and Axis compete to develop these human weapons to win the war. But the problem is, Germany took the time to find and develop three of the rarest and most powerful type of tankmen, the battleships. To explain why these guys are such a big deal, basically they're the Uber equivalent to Daenerys' Three Dragons. They are nearly unmatched in their destructive potential, no conventional weapon is effective against them, and the only hope for facing them down is to counter them with another battleship, which the Allies don't have, as Germany uses theirs to cut a bloody swath across Europe. As things get more desperate, the Nazis take bolder and riskier gambits, like sending Battleship Sieglin into London for a decapitation strike against Winston Churchill. The Allies hope to counter with heavy tankmen as they unlock technology for double stacking, but their heavy tankmen and heavy battleship prove to have major design flaws. And the Nazis unlock the ability for double stacking for the halo effect, which they utilize to devastating effect with their naval blockade and the Great Burn, where the Nazis begin incinerating cities across Europe. This leads to a final confrontation at the Battle of Calais, where Britain deploys their heavy battleship, the HMH Churchill, in hopes that it will counter the Nazi battleships. Sadly, she fails, and Britain is forced to capitulate and surrender to the Nazis or risk annihilation. Then the Nazis begin their invasion of America. America poses an existential threat to the Axis, with its production capabilities outstripping anything Germany is capable of after the devastation of the war. If the Axis has any chance of victory, America must be ground into the dirt. With the three American battleships still under construction, the Nazis are allowed to run unopposed across the East Coast. They burned Boston, the White House, and New York. But thanks to the help of Alan Turing, the Americans develop and deploy a new Uber type never before seen on the battlefield. The Zephyr proves a significant risk, but it accomplishes the impossible, taking down one of the Nazi battleships. The tables turned and Germany attempts one more strike before retreating, but after seeing the doomed endeavor, their other battleship surrenders, and thus the invasion of America comes to an end. Now the war has come to its final stage. Germany has one more Uber type they're developing. In order to buy their time, they have begun another assault against Russia. That has come to a close thanks to the combined power of Battleship Maria and the HMH Churchill. But Stalin does not like having a god walk amongst men and betrays Maria, which opens the curtain on today's issue. So that covers the basics, but as any Uber historian will tell you, that's an extremely truncated version, so I recommend that you track down the comic on your own if you think any of that sounded interesting, and join me and my fellow tankmen as we crusade towards the end of this saga. So guys, I hope you are ready for the Passion of Maria. This is a Christ story for the new era. A story of a new Messiah who wanders through the desert for 40 days, comes back, becomes a god, gets apostles, then gets betrayed by one of those apostles, then goes on a mad, murderous rampage and annihilates everything, which makes her much, much less Jesus-like. But, I didn't realize all the parallels. I always thought Maria's story was just sort of, lightly aligned with the classic tale of Christ. But in the return of Kieran Gillen providing his commentary after 2 weeks of only giving his love to the wicked and the divine, while us poor enhanced humans got nothing, he finally returns back with the letters page. Well, not the letters page, but the author's commentary. And he tells us that, it's a Jesus story. It's my own secular atheist plus version of Jesus. And bravo. Bravo. If Uber was more popular, I'm sure the atheism plus community would, take Maria as their god emperor. Just like how, Anonymous and 4chan adopted the Guy Fawkes mask, from V for Vendetta. And who knows, maybe if Uber ever gets turned into an animated series, or a live-action TV show, or a movie, Maria will get to be seen by the world, and people will go apeshit over her, and then she'll become the unofficial mascot that people pray to as the atheist god king of the anarchistic communist community of Tumblania. I could see that happening. Although, as of right now, it won't, because only me and the handful of people watching this video are Uber fanboys, so Maria probably will not become the God Emperor of the Neil deGrasse Tyson secular humanist atheism plus whatever, that whole movement winds up becoming, to the point where it eventually forms its own religion. But she could be. She would definitely be a very good candidate. And, I definitely love the sort of narrative of, this is the Jesus story, only if Jesus, after rising from the dead, put on some sunglasses, took on some AK-47s, and just murdered everyone. Only instead, it's Maria. And, as awful, Uber Invasion has definitely showed a less sympathetic side to Maria. We've seen, a murderous version of her that sort of was kind of building us up to be you know what? If she got taken down, we wouldn't have too much issues with it. And in a way, in the last issue, I was kind of a little bit on Stalin's side because I was Maria could have single-handedly ended the war. She could have killed Sieglin. She could have killed Hideki and basically crippled the Nazis and the Japanese. But thanks to her selfishness or selfish altruism, it continues to, the war continues to persist. And now we know why Russia was taken out of the war, because Russia doesn't exist. Maria single-handedly demolishes the entire state. She crumbles it along, killing hundreds of thousands of innocent people as she goes on her warpath to go after Stalin. And in one of the finally in one of the historical alternative narratives, Stalin gets what's coming to him. And I must say, it is a great scene where, Stalin is realizes that she's still alive after she's come back from her Jesus-like resurrection and sees that no one is there. And then he comes to the horrible realization that she's outside and she's waving at him. And then she not only does she kill her former disciples, because, fuck turning the other cheek, the ones who betrayed her. She punishes them. She destroys everything around it, walks up to Stalin's freaking little hovel, and she's like, turn around. And then she transforms him into the red muck. And you know what, to her credit, Maria was cooperative for someone who's has no reason to be. But then when they fuck with her, they fuck with the wrong person. And this also confirms my theory from last week, or last time we did this, is that, Maria definitely has Geltmensch capabilities, and she probably created some sort of hallucination for her corpse, and that's how she survived. It's 100% confirmed. It's interesting. On the GreatSpaceBattles.com forum, I was looking to get people's reactions because, I knew I wanted to take some more time on this video, which will also be handled off to the Pixel Hipster to see if he can spice it up. I gave him Uber, if you got free time, go read this comic. It'll help you make the video. And he so graciously agreed to it. So thank you, Pixel Hipster. And remember, subscribe to his channel. I'll include a link in the bottom below. Thank the Pixel Hipster for all his free time to help make this a better video. Yeah. Like I was saying, it was telegraphed well enough that Maria had some sort of form of Geltmensch powers. And I was looking at spacebattles.com, and people were saying that, oh, it's bullshit. She's like a Mary Sue. That I completely disagree with. The whole point of the Mary Sue is that, they're these sort of, perfect, quirky, and you could say that, because she has such a quirky personality, she's such, a Zoe Deschanel kind of ooh, I'm so fun and crazy and wacky and kooky, ooh. But what makes Maria work where, another character in that mold wouldn't work is the fact that, Kieran Gillen put her through absolute hell before she became the atheist God King. He put her in the initial attack, forced her into the Soviet extermination, had her survive that, had her make it to the Soviet gulag, had her get beaten by other soldiers, had her watch all of her friends and colleagues get murdered by Stalin and his Uber meat grinder because he was too impatient to take the time to develop a full force of tank men. And despite that, she didn't, just murder everyone on the spot. She defended her country because she had enough pride to do that. And you know what? The core key to Maria is if you ask her nicely, she'll help you out. She'll throw you a bone or two. Because she's not that much of an asshole. But, oh boy, you fuck with her, Maria will not let you get away with that. So she's most definitely not a Mary Sue. I will say, though, on my part, I do feel the same sort of frustration that people felt with her back. I had the same sort of frustration back when we were discussing the Geltmensch. When the Geltmensch was introduced, it was really clunky because you have the scene where Hitler's dead, and then he isn't. He's like, everything's fine, woo! And the Geltmensch hadn't been formally introduced, so you're just reading the comic and you're like, what the fuck? This doesn't make any sense. This is stupid. Kieran Gillen, you better have a good explanation for this. And he did. And it was funny. I went to a Comic-Con panel where he was at New York City Comic-Con, where he was talking about the Wicked and the Divine. Or no, just it was an overview of all this stuff. And I was the only Uber fanboy, and I was like, explain what happened. What the hell? And then he let it slip that, you'll find out. And then there's a little something there about a new Uber type. And then I because he revealed it in the comments section, I was like, the Geltmensch. It all makes sense. So here's what I think's going to happen. I feel like what Kieran's going to do is Alan Turing's going to find out a lot of critical information from the second codex that the Nazis disregarded in terms of activation. Through that codex, it'll be unveiled what the proper way of finding susceptibles is, and we're probably going to learn that there's a new form of self-activation where, if you give it to the right person or under the right circumstances or the right personality type, that, the crystal will fuse with them and their abilities will fuse with the will of the crystal. And that's how they'll learn how to make the catalyst. That's how they'll learn to transmute matter. That's how they'll be able to tap into the other abilities. For all we know, Maria might even be able to manifest Zephyr abilities. I mean, she's been able to do the impossible, so it might be something that can happen. This might be something that we can see. But I hope that, the explanation for what makes Maria comes from Alan Turing. And it makes sense. It's a little frustrating. I do want to know what makes Maria so special. How is she able to control, what type of activations she gets without any sort of, tutorial or training? How is she able to do it by instinct? It's obviously similar to what happened to Battleship Zero, and I'm very curious because it definitely seems like there's some sort of like thing where she fuses with the catalyst and then she's able to mold the catalyst to do what she wants on an almost instinctual basis. And before the series is over, I'd like an interesting, explanation of how that works. But that raises another question, and this is probably one of the most frustrating things. Well, on one hand, I did really like this issue, but on the other hand, we waited 2 months for this, so it felt like it went by too fast, and I wanted to learn more about what was going on in other parts of the world. But this makes me really, really want a sequel series to Uber. I really want to know what the world looks like after this is all over, especially now that we know Russia's gone, and we basically have the, atheism plus secular god community of Maria's Russia that she builds from the ashes, and I really want to know what that community looks like and how that affects the world of politics and what kind of world she builds in her new world. And it seems to imply that we won't see Maria. Her story is effectively done. She's out of the war. It'll be interesting to see if Kyrian brings her in before everything's over, if Project Gutenrang gets her to become a protector again, or if this is it. This is the last we ever see of her, and she just goes off and, makes her own state of anarchy where she's the protector and nobody fucks with her just because they know that it's not worth it, that nobody messes with Mother Russia. So I certainly hope Avatar Press isn't doing well, so I certainly hope that we get an Uber sequel, because it's just too interesting to know, now that Pandora's box is open, what does the world look like now that this technology is freely available? What happens when you have legions of supermen and women who can, build buildings with their eyes, melt away your face and arm with their eyes? What does the world look like when this technology is allowed to run around rampantly? And I really want to know, so I hope, Kieran Gillen isn't too busy with his, new comic Die, or, writing for Star Wars or Marvel and all those other projects, that, he gets to continue this, because, it's too interesting to not want to see what happens next when, it does eventually end. But, another great solid chapter showing us, fascists getting screwed over, as Kieran Gillen gives us a badass version of the Christ resurrection story. And, of course, the most charming thing I found in all this was the wonderful relationship between Leah and Maria. As I suspected, Maria gave Leah her leg back! HMH Churchill is back in the fight! Oh, hell yeah! Leah is back at it again. She's got legs. She's mobile. Hell yeah! Hell yeah, HMH Churchill. You go, girl. Motherfucking Hulk monster. Tear into some Nazis. So that was a great gift that Maria gave to the Allies, and it was nice to, I thought she might have done it earlier, but it was nice to see her do it as a sort of, sorry that I incinerated everything within 50 blocks. I don't want to kill you, but you can go back. So Leah is now far more dangerous because we know she's pretty much indestructible to halo effects. In all honesty, Leah could probably have a very good chance of killing Maria if she needed to, given the fact that, we know her resistance makes her practically Halo immune. So she could, and if Battleship Zero could reflect, the Maria's Halo effect, then I think Battleship HMH Churchill probably has just as good of a chance as that as well. But yeah, things are not looking good for the Axis. Despite the destruction of Russia, Leah's back in the game, more dangerous than ever before. They still have Sigmund. They have the 2 heavy cruisers. They have Razor, who's still, maybe not fully functional, but still kind of lethal. And it may even repair and become functional. They also have Tamara being built up, and there's no way Kieran Gillen would introduce her without, having her do something by the end. And, of course, Leah. So we've got, a force of, 5-6 battleship-class people. And, all there is Siglin and Hideki. And we learn on the last page that good old Sigmund is about to do some crimes against humanity in Japan. He's going to recreate the atom bomb. So I'm curious to see what that looks like. Although if I had to guess, I think what might happen is, I feel like Kyrian is going to, punish Sigmund for his crimes against humanity in burning down cities. So I think that Japan will use the bomb against him. And it would be a double irony. The U.S. nukes Japan with Sigmund, and then Japan nukes Sigmund back with the bomb, and he gets, melted in place and something horrible. Yeah, Sigmund, I can't see him, like, getting out of this entirely scotch-free. But I'm very much looking forward to it. And there's, like, a cover where it implies that Hideki's going to face off against Vernon Rivers. So, you know, Vernon, I hope you do us proud. I hope Kieran Gillen doesn't do anything mean to you. I'm rooting for you. It would be really sad to see, you know, you get, like, you know, crippled by the U.S. military and then you get horribly disfigured. The odds aren't against you, but I'm hoping the U.S. comes up with a good deployment plan so they use you effectively. Or maybe there's a surprise and you actually are a full battleship and they just did the full activations. Fingers crossed. So, you know, Rivers boys, do us proud. We are rooting for you in the comments section. And we are curious to see, you know, Imperial's Japan finally, you know, take its licks after Hideki, you know, committed mass genocide and slaughter of civilian populations. And thankfully, you know, the next issue is coming out in November, so we won't have to wait super long. Although, unfortunately, I haven't seen issue 18 announced any recently, so we may not get that till 2019, so there'll be another Uber withdrawal, and you'll just, you know, see me just being angry around because I can't read more Uber. Which is so sad and unfortunate. But who knows? I might actually, you know, tomorrow I'm going to New York Comic Con. I don't know if Kieran Gillen's there, but usually he's there and he has a booth. Maybe I'll try and record an impromptu video interview where I can, like, get him to give a few hints about the future of the series or something I can use in a video for the next review. Maybe I'll make predictions and we'll see how accurate they are for the next chapter. Fingers crossed. And maybe I'll get him to slip Project Gutenrang if I'm lucky. That is if I can find him. That is if he's there. That is if he's not being swarmed by Wicked and the Divine cosplayers. Fingers crossed, man. Fingers crossed. You know, a guy can dream. So this is a good, solid 8.0 chapter. Go buy Maria cosplay. You know, dress up as your favorite atheist god emperor. The girl deserves it. Leah Cohen's back. The Battleship Broads. You know, it's a sad thing that we probably won't see them team up again, but it was fun while it lasted. So thank you for hearing my thoughts about Uber Invasion issue 16. Let me know what you thought about this issue. Validate me for being right about the Geltmensch abilities with Maria. Thanks for hanging out, and thank you, Pixel Hipster, for editing this video. And remember, lobsters and tennis, but don't you grab it.